He's getting into the moment.
Welcome back to the CONVO Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here, newspaper guy.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Oz is spinning on the ones and twos. Fam, I'm just looking at this right now because I want to envision what I'm going to be seeing tomorrow with the J6 hearings bombshell witness, fam. the ex-chief of staff, Mark Meadows, an aide to him overheard something that implied that Trump thought it was okay for Pence to get hung, and it was an emergency hearing, and this was the bombshell, fam. It's a load of crap, and anybody who's standing behind this bullshit government and not speaking out that this is what they're doing while people are starving in the streets, while people are about to be evicted from their homes, while food supplies are running out, while gas is $7 an hour, they're sitting there and they're making
a gallon
on your dime, ladies and gentlemen, completely and utterly disgusting, Liz Cheney. And anybody who's on that panel right there, you know what I'm saying? They deserve to not ever be taken serious ever in their life. They should never work in government ever in their life. This whole thing has been a sham, fam, that has proved absolutely nothing. That an unarmed mob wasn't the actual cause for an insurrection, because it wasn't an insurrection.
A sham, fam. Sham.
That rhymes, fam. That rhymes.
Yes, fam.
So, fam, let's get rolling because we do have a guest coming on in about a half hour, special guest today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to all our Patreons out there, of course, as well. We always appreciate your love in the beginning of the month and at the end of the month, because it really does help us out, helps us get on the ground, cover the elections like in Colombia. We are going to Brazil. That's going to be a lit one, fams. So we're going to need your help there. But it is today, Tuesday, fam. And the FDA is having a hearing as we speak right now. They're probably approving stuff. So we're going to have a special guest on at the top of the hour to talk about some stuff. It's going to be on Rokfin only. So we only have a small section here on YouTube. So get on over to Rokfin. Now is the time, fam. But you have some amazing things to report on. I want to talk about this here. I'm excited about this. Let's dive right into it.
Yeah, so you might want to tell your guests a little bit later, because I don't know, because if we still have to do the super raise and we're gonna chat, it's gonna take a minute to go over some of the stuff. Now, this is the BRICS summit, as you all know, was a counter summit going on at the same time as the G7 summit. The G7 summit has been criticized largely for being extremely opulent and for being just a complete PR stunt, essentially, to just show off these the typical countries like Great Britain, the United States. You have Spain, you have Japan, Germany, and they've all been meeting and having this opulent area in Bavaria in the Alps that is costing so much money, millions and millions, and it's being paid by the citizens, by the way, of the European Union. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what the G7 summit was talking about versus what the BRICS summit was, and we can go ahead and start with that. So the BRICS had Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they were meeting. And of course, this whole thing started in the year 2009. And it was, of course, during the financial crisis that they met. And it was to improve the global economic situation and reform these financial institutions. And the countries obviously have different ideologies, but they were all the ones that had been victims of the West and the United States. So that's a huge bit as to how this whole thing began. So the whole thing about the BRICS is that they've been trying to develop this new global reserve currency, and Putin, of course, has been leading that fight. And with this, about 13 years ago, there was there was a new currency that the necessity of a new currency is now more relevant than ever. And this is, of course, from RT. And Putin has been announced on June 22nd, ahead of the BRICS summit, that they were intending on developing their own currency based on the basket of new currencies. And so that's kind of what they've been talking about. They've also been talking about how to expand economic relationships with each other and how to have these develop in terms of in the West and how that has been affecting them, specifically the European Union, right? And of course, at the same time, all the BRICS states, including India, would benefit from this sort of more multipolar economy, right, and financial system with less dependence on the previous type of system where it was an extremely unipolar system. And so Putin actually suggested this particular way to get out of the global economic crisis. And basically, China had already replaced the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, with and the World Bank, with which is the largest creditor of the last decade, expanding investments in assets across the global south and beyond throughout the Belt, with the Belt and Road Initiative and beyond. But of course, challenging the US institutions. And so BRICS established the new development bank in 2014. So there has been this push to do that. And we have seen it with China via the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, China obviously has their own issues with what's happening in Africa. But in terms of what they've provided for Latin America, you could talk about Bolivia, you could talk about the transportation system, the investments. A lot of these countries in the global south see it as a more equitable relationship compared to anything they've remotely had with the West. And so on the next one, Oz, you can just go ahead and put it up. So let me see here. The Islamic Republic of Iran also submitted an application to join the group that made up of the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And as we know, of course, Argentina has also wanted to join. And basically, the Iranian foreign minister said that this is a very creative mechanism that will, with broad aspects. And this is obviously beneficial to a nation like Iran that's constantly been under US sanctions and it's constantly been repressed in one form or another by the West in particular. So Iran's members, of course, would add value for everyone involved. And that's what he said. The BRICS members account for 30% of the world's GDP and 40% of the global population. Actually, this is a very important point. The BRICS member countries have a greater population than the G7 summit countries. Yeah. Yet the G7 summit countries have so much more, or had so much more control. So now you're seeing, once again, we're talking about this opposition to the previous world order, which was the United States and the West at the helm calling the shots. Now you're seeing this transition where they're like, no, hey, we have some of these same interests. We may have different ideologies, but why don't we get together? I mean, you're talking about India, you're talking about Iran, you're talking about China, you're talking about Argentina now, you're talking about obviously Russia. And all of these countries have different ideologies and they're in different type of governments. However, the one thing that unites them is the fact that they've all been screwed by the West. And this is extremely obvious, and it's extremely important into when we're talking about the development of these countries. And you see how it goes from east to the global south. So it's a very big deal. And, you know, the Iranian president addressed the BRICS virtual summit that was hosted by China and expressed Iran's readiness to just get involved. And Argentina, like I said, also applied for the BRICS. And President Alberto Fernandez on Friday urged that the creation of the cooperation mechanisms that could eventually represent an alternative to the West. So Pasta, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just was going to say, to piggyback on everything you're saying right now, not only do they have the majority of the people on the planet, more of the people on the planet within this new BRICS group, as compared to the United States, what they're doing with all their little cronies around their table with Bojo and his hair and everything. They have the countries that has the more, of the resources, the actual natural resources, and more of the manufacturing of goods and services. You're talking China, India, Brazil now. I mean, Brazil joining that group to me is the one that's why it's like, wait a second. They're not just going to sit back and let Bolsonaro go, hey, I'm going with Russia and China over here. I mean, that's it makes everything more interesting for that election coming up. But it is odd to see them at the table. And then if Turkey gets over there and Mexico, if they get all in line with these BRICS groups, man, wow.
Yeah. And Brazil is very interesting. I think Lula, weirdly enough, I think would follow that lead if by all accounts would follow that lead because it would just make sense. It's more of like what I said before, and you brought up some very good points. It's about the economic situation. It's more than any sort of ideology. It's the fact that these nations have been ruined or in some form or another either are threatened or have been damaged by the West. And so now there's an opportunity to grow stronger together as is that a Hillary Clinton slogan? God, I don't know. But
stronger together, fam. Stronger together.
But legitimately for these nations in West Asia and the East and in the global South, together they are far stronger. And so that I think is what we're seeing is more of an economic decision to, there is a shift happening and we're going to get ahead of it because it's happening whether they like it or not. Yeah. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of this. So you had some things you put up as well.
Well, yeah, this next slide over here where it says BRICS reaffirms, the BRICS summit reaffirms that Russia is not as isolated as NATO suggests. You can see all the peeps up there. You got Narendra Modi. They have a new government coming in there, so it's going to be very interesting. Bolsonaro, a new government might be coming in there. South Africa, and then, of course, Putin and Xi right there. So it says pretty much, I just grabbed the first paragraph, the recent BRICS summit managed to run its course this past week with very little fanfare, despite the fact that Russia is in the midst of a conflict with Ukraine that has led to a worldwide economic war. China is edging towards a potential invasion of Taiwan, and much of the planet is in the middle of this stagflationary crisis in the meantime. I like the way they say invasion, please. The one major takeaway from the summit was the reaffirmed stance of the BRICS that they would continue to work closely with Russia in economic terms. So pretty much, fam, like you said, it's that shift right now, that economic shift. We know what's going on with the ruble, right? We understand what's going on with the resources now. They have other customers to go to. If Europe wanted to turn their nose and say, we don't want your gas anymore, Mr. Vladimir Putin. Well, he found a buyer in China, and you could see them together making this bond, fam.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is smart. The smart thing to do. And of course, we'll talk about the G7 in terms of really what it is, but it's really not much. And so all of this has been happening this past week and this week as well. While there have actually been protests, I didn't quite put it in the folder, but there were protests outside of Madrid against the G7 summit. There have been protests in general in a lot of Europe because of the amount of money being spent on the summit. And one thing that came out of this too is that Turkey refuses sanctions on as we talked about yesterday, on Russia, and Turkey is actually, as of today, Turkey will not vote for Ukraine to be a part of NATO.
Yeah.
So
I believe it's to be part of the EU too, as well.
Yeah. So they're really challenging, and it's really interesting to see what Erdogan is doing. Now, I put up this tweet because this is also important, again, reiterating the fact that Argentina is going to join. So while the White House was thinking about what else in the world they could turn off, ban, and destroy, Argentina and Iran applied to BRICS. Maria Zakharova, Russian Ministry of Affairs spokeswoman.
Yeah.
She is obviously, she's always talking. She's always saying a lot of things. She's much better than Biden's press secretary.
Yeah.
That we have. But yes, fam.
No, I was just going to say you're going to have to get better on your pronunciation for Russian.
Oh, yeah.
Now that, you know.
Sam, I know. It's quite difficult, actually. That's probably the hardest thing for me. The Russian pronunciation is like
with a Latin Russian accent. This year's G7 summit, which is being held in Germany in a German castle, fam.
Yes.
A luxury hotel in Bavaria cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of euros. The German state broadcaster ARD has reported while questioning the worth of the event. So, fam, I don't know if they're going to be talking about a lot of things of value, but man, it costs a lot of money to have this thing on the taxpayers' dime.
Yeah, and the one thing that they're spending most of their money on is security. They had to pay, I think, millions to have police officers everywhere. And that's where most of their money is going. And who's footing the bill? It's the people of the area of the European Union. And that's, I mean, and these people are staying in this like resort and they're spending so much money. They're whining and dining. And all of that is getting paid by people. People should be pissed off. They should be completely like throwing this out. And also, of course, the locals have complained about how it's also ruining their lives because they're like scaring off tourists. They're like causing traffic. It's a whole mess, all for 2 days of what many are calling just a PR stunt where you can't actually make any actual decisions just in that short time because of the way the event is structured. So either they meet beforehand or a lot of the things that are said don't get actually completed. Like they're just being said, oh, we're going to do this and that, but they don't actually follow through. So it's just one giant and entire just show off like events so they can say, oh, look at us, we're so important. Let's take some pictures. Let's have this photo op. And that's essentially what it is.
Yeah. Fam, that next slide over there, it pretty much just highlights Oz. We talked about it. Fiorella said the security, how much it costs. It's ridiculous for the security that it's, this was some 30 million more than 7 years ago when the summit was also held at El Mau. The bulk of the expenses goes towards policy security arrangements, which cost 147 million this time. So it's ridiculous how much they're spending on just the security.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of money. And some of the things that have been happening too are what they were talking about is all about countering Russia and China. That's the main thing that dominated. So you can go ahead and put the slide up. So the main thing that they were talking about was actually countering China's global infrastructure with $600 billion of their own global infrastructure initiative to counter China's push and political and commercial influence, right? They're trying, China is doing things like the Belt and Road Initiative. So they were talking about how to counter that. And they quote unquote talked about authoritarian nations. And so that was the extent of what the G7 summit really focused on. And you can put on the next slide as well, and we'll just continue talking about that. So again, at the helm, it was Russia and China. And the United States wants to aim to leverage a total of 300 billion or 200 billion for the program in the next coming 5 years through federal financing and private sector investments. And Biden actually never said the word China, but you could tell that this is what he was talking about when they talked about declaring that when democracies do all that we can offer, they would triumph over autocracies. So they were essentially admitting that they were focused on China, and essentially that's what they focused on. And then the plan that they're coming up with, they're supposed to come up with, even though it's really not much of a plan, because as I said, it's just a bunch of talk, is supposed to compete with China's Belt and Road Initiative, which obviously we know, going to Latin America, a lot of bonds and relationships have been built with these developing nations like Nicaragua, Bolivia, et cetera. And so Biden wants to compete with that. And of course, you have also parts of Africa and Southeast Asia that have been involved in the Belt and Road Initiative. So yeah, I don't have much faith in any sort of plan that the West is formulating to attack China's Belt and Road Initiative, considering people are seeing the chickens coming home to roost, and they're like, nope, we're gonna go over here, because they know that's where the game is right now, is to really expand their relationships. Even nations like India that have largely been adversarial with many others, so there's this shift happening, and I don't think the United States and the West are going to be able to stop it from happening.
No. Yeah, and nor do I. I mean, the only other way to stop it is another war. But I think that they're running out of ways to keep Americans hands tied and confused and at each other's, necks. I think with this last one, hopefully they overplayed their cards again. I don't know if they did. Watching some of the people going down to the judges' houses in Roe v. Wade sent to me a lot of video sent to me from Corinne, our good friend. It's I'm wondering, fam, right now, because this really here, when it comes to the foreign policy, the geopolitical aspect of what's going around in the world, this is really what do you call those things? A shank in the back of the neck of the United States empire over here. They're losing grip. They are. And that's why I think we're paying attention to the global South right now is so important. We see the pink and red kind of wave coming. How long are they going to be able to hold on? Just to piggyback off your comment, or to agree with you, I don't think they can stop it. I think it's only going to get bigger. And there are some rude awakening days from some Americans out there who think that life is just going to go on as normal. It's not. We're going to have a diesel fuel problem because the chemical we need from Russia, we can't get. And we're going to run out of it sooner or later. And that's going to shut down a lot of stuff in the United States. So it's going to be one thing after the other, because these other countries, not only do they have the numbers and the people, they have all the manufacturing and the resources and things we've depended on them for years. What are we going to just suddenly stop and start taking care of ourselves? We better start doing that right now. People sort of start growing your own food.
It's a manufactured crisis too, as a lot of us have said, as even Putin has said, because this can easily stop, but they refuse to lift sanctions. And they refuse to cooperate. And also, Wall Street is going to take a hit too soon. They already have, but it's actually going to get worse. So, I mean, and Rachel put this video up today on her Twitter where she was talking about how the people that are actually being most hurt by sanctions are the people from the nations that are sanctioning Russia. It's not the Russians being hurt by sanctions. It is people like us that come to this country, and now we can't use our bank cards or credit cards. And we're in a situation. And then also everybody that is footing the bills of this war, of this conflict. And of course, the Ukrainians, who have basically a destroyed country that is ruled by the West, the United States, and a fascist paramilitary force. It is no longer a democracy. It's stopped being a democracy. So you have all these people within the nations that are doing this getting people into this mess are the ones that are suffering the most. So that's something to also consider. And for the next one, Oz, if you want to just go ahead and put it on the screen, we'll just talk about this really quickly.
I think that's almost the same information that you had on the other two slides. It almost says the same exact thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we just talked about it. Yeah, it's just basically, again, the opulence is ridiculous. And it's being criticized largely by people from the own German media that are seeing this and saying, this is ridiculous. Look what's happening outside of our windows. Look at the people that are having issues, filling up their tanks with petrol. We're having a grain crisis and we're all blaming Putin. But really, you have the audacity to have this opulent meeting where nothing is really getting resolved, where it's all about showmanship. So, that's essentially it.
Next slide.
And I think we also mentioned this 30 million more than 7 years ago. It might be, is it the same? I don't know. It might be.
It's the same thing, just different writing, different format. But yeah, I mean, just saying that most of it, like almost 150 million for 2 days for security. $150 million for security for a bunch of bozos like Bojo and Biden to go hang out in a castle. Well, they discuss absolutely nothing and just take pictures.
No, they're just discussing we should go and host can you imagine $150 million just on security alone? That's insane.
It's nuts.
It's just insane. I think we've already talked about all this as well. That again, this is the critics are talking about that. This isn't a serious debate of topics. This is just about them talking about the possibilities and the things they want to talk about, and that it's not real. It's not rooted in anything that they actually plan on necessarily doing. They can just shake hands and say, okay, this is going to happen. But really, at the end of the day, is it going to happen? They don't have to, keep their word up. They'll put out little points in the media talking about how they're gonna talk about this, but that they're gonna do this, but there's no actual action taken. They just gotta pretend and then puff their chest and be like, look, this is what we're gonna do against Russia and against China. This is how we're gonna take down these autocracies. This is what we're gonna do. It's so full of shit. They're so full of shit. And I think more people are seeing through it. Yes.
This one here, the reservoir of dog shots. Come on. Like they try to get the whole freaking reservoir of dogs walk.
Nobody
cares.
Nobody cares. And okay, they agree to continue to support Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia's like, well, this conflict can end tomorrow if Ukraine says, okay, we're done. And it's just fucking hilarious. It's just such theater, the West is just full of theater at this point. That's all they're doing to keep up appearances is theater, to trying to show that they have any sort of upper hand in this whole situation. Now, this part is really hilarious, Pasta, because you know how many people the United States has sanctioned. They even went as far as sanctioning Vladimir Putin's daughters. So Russia decided they had already sanctioned Biden, but they decided to sanction Jill Biden and, among others, several of these political leaders as well. So it's funny that the United States is they're pissed off that this is happening, right? It says the sanctions are aimed at individuals accused of shaping the Russophobic policies of the United States, according to the Russian Foreign Ministry. In addition, the Biden's Senate Minority Leader, in addition to the Biden Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senator Susan Collins, Kirsten Gillibrand, Ben Sasse, and Chuck Grassley were also listed. Notice that they sanctioned both Democrats and Republicans because they're both neocons. Yep. And I think it's hilarious that that Russia's doing this, and the pearl clutching that I've seen from Democrats. Oh, I can't believe Russia's doing this. You know how many people we sanctioned? We literally sanctioned like individuals in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
When we were there, we interviewed
family.
One guy. The whole Ortega family for what? I mean, this is it's just kind of hilarious that this is coming back to the U.S. That they're getting sanctioned.
World for you, Ortegas. Sorry.
Sorry.
Wally world. He ain't coming here.
And of course, this is in response to the sanctions also imposed on Moscow and among other things, right? And again, they've sanctioned Putin and previously Biden, Blinken, and Lloyd Austin, as well as William Burns and Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden have been sanctioned by the Kremlin, by Vladimir Putin. And I think that's, I mean, he's sanctioning the right people, the people that have pushed Russiagate, the people that have pushed this propaganda against Russia. I didn't put it in there, but Stephen King today tweeted how, Slava Ukraini, and then somebody else, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense Twitter account tweeted that that all the monsters in the Stephen King novels are nothing like compared to Russia. Russia is worse than all the monsters. It's like, are you kidding me?
They're worse than the freaking clown, the It clown. Oh my God!
No way are they worse than the It clown.
We have some live footage.
Look at Vladdy's face.
Yeah. Well, listen. This is breaking news. This is when Vladimir heard at the BRICS summit that he was getting sanctioned more by the United States. This is what he said. Hey. Hey. In the coffee mug. Hey, and then you got Bolsonaro and Xi Jinping. Yeah.
Африке дистанционно словно поднимают тост.
Oh my God,
Bolsonaro is just happy to be there. He's like, I'm here. Wow.
You won't be there for long, Bolsonaro. It'll be interesting to see what happens for
Gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. Bolsonaro has been great when it comes to.
Are we bad right now? Kind of. Right now, we are? Yeah. We could.
Are we getting somebody in? Can you hear us?
What was that?
All right, you're getting guests and stuff. So, but yeah, that's that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining on in. We have a special guest coming on. This is the time right now. You're gonna have to go over to Rokfin only. We have a nice crowd on YouTube, but unfortunately, Julie Love, put it on up if you can. Give us the link. Let's get over to Rokfin. We cannot stay here on YouTube because if we do, we will get our butts spanked, whatnot. So we're leaving YouTube in 5.
Wait. Hold on. Before we leave YouTube, tomorrow I'm going to talk about the supposed bombing of the Ukrainian mall by Russia. So there's a lot more to that than the Western media is getting. So I just wanted to wait for a few more updates, but I'll be talking about that tomorrow on the show.
J6 updates, by the way. J6 updates tomorrow. So,
okay, yeah, you can. I am not. I want nothing to do. I am so fed up with their bullshit about January 6th. If you're still talking about January 6th as an insurrection, you are an absolute moron. Like, come on. Jesus
an insurrection
Christ.
Without one single weapon. But please, and they
almost had me killed.
Oh my God. Guys, get on over to Rokfin in 5, in 4, in 3, in 2, in 1. We are leaving